all I can say is I saw the remnants of 4 dudes that got beheaded. That's about all I can say. And I get an email from a Russian that is telling me that on my expeditions, if I ever come across an artifact, that he will meet me anywhere in Mexico and purchase it from me. Highly illegal. Black market of artifacts is alive and well and easily accessible. You know, if you want, they would just come to you like DoorDash. If archaeologists don't know what something is, they call it a temple.
How was the Rogan experience? Welcome back to the Ancient Technology Podcast. If you enjoy the show and want to help me creating high-quality episodes, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. You can find those links in the description. Your support gives you early access, a say in the podcast direction, and exclusive perks like post-show bonus content. Most importantly, it helps me travel to meet guests in person, which is a key to producing the most engaging and in-depth episodes. Thank you for considering. And now, let's get back to the show. Luke Caverns,
How's it going, man?
thanks for joining me on the show.
I'm honored to be on your show. I have seen you being active lately on the interwebs, YouTube and X, and it's cool to see like other people who are young, and we just established we're the same age.
Yeah,
So it's cool to see other people who are, well, you're the only other person who is young and also in this space. So it's cool to connect with you. And I feel like we've been orbiting each other for a while.
yeah, on X and
Yeah.
also on Instagram.
Yeah. So
I'm very interested in your story. How did you start? How did you become an anthropologist? And then like an educator, let's say. Do you consider yourself an educator?
I don't know. Maybe people learn something from me. I don't know what I consider myself. I'm just me. Like I'm just interested in what I'm interested in, and I enjoy learning about it and like obsessively learning about things and then sharing them. I got, probably the first time that I remember having anthropological thoughts, I guess, was when I was a kid. My grandpa was like a traveling missionary, and he was interested in the ancient biblical world, but he was a preacher. And I would be sitting in church, and I would have the Bibles open, and we have these illustrated Bibles here in the South in the U.S. And they'll show the Tigris and Euphrates River, or they'll show the Nile with the palm trees, and you'd see images of the ancient buildings in the back and people walking back and forth. And I would just stare at these same images for years. I would just stare at it while my grandpa was talking. And the most interesting things that I enjoyed, or the things I found the most interesting, was when he would talk a little bit about what it meant to be a person living in the ancient biblical world. And I just found that fascinating. And constantly I would remind myself, this isn't Lord of the Rings. The biblical world was real. These people were real people. And I just became more and more obsessively interested in what it was like to live a long time ago. And all of my influences growing up were things that were well before my time. Like, I didn't grow up watching cartoons. I never, maybe other than SpongeBob, I never watched a cartoon. I always watched vintage American TV shows. Like, I don't know if you'd be familiar with it, but the Andy Griffith Show, the Waltons, Gomer Pyle, USMC. These are old
No.
American shows that are all in black and white. And that's what I grew up watching. So I listened to old music, like 40s, 50s, 60s music every day.
But was it an influence of the family or?
Yeah, it was my family. They raised me on old classic American media. So I always had an appreciation for things that were old. And so that's I had a lot of influence. That was kind of from my immediate family. And then my grandpa on my dad's side, he was an explorer. He inherited a big oil company. My great grandfather, he was involved in he was involved in oil drilling in East Texas, and his grandfather was involved in cattle driving out in west of San Antonio, Texas. This is back in the 1890s, and while they were cattle driving, they were also looking for lost Spanish gold that was hidden in the hills and in the canyons out in West Texas. And basically, what would happen is in the early 1500s, the Spaniards, after they conquered the Aztec capital, they start moving up north through Mexico, and they come into the borders of the modern day United States. They cross the Rio Grande into Texas, up into New Mexico. So from the early to mid 1500s, they're all the way up in Mexico, opening up these ancient Native American mines, trying to get valuable metals out of the ground. And so there's all these stories, and there are Spanish bandits that like go off with the Native Americans, and they would sack Spanish caravans, and they drag the gold up into the hills, and the gold's lost. There's all kinds of stories of lost Spanish gold in the American Southwest. So that's what they did in their free time, and they found some stuff. And there was a young boy that showed up from Mexico, and he was a half black, half Mexican boy, and he had no home, and he was out with the cattle one day with my family, and together they found this Spanish mine. And without getting too far into it, it devolves into this one of the biggest treasure hunts in Texas history. A bunch of people die. Only one of my great uncles makes it out, who's really my great grandfather. He makes it out and then takes the money and gets involved in oil drilling in East Texas. And that goes down a couple generations to my dad's dad.
Yeah, okay.
And so he continues this legacy of looking for lost Spanish gold. This is something my family's been doing for like 130 years now. Well, at least till now, where I'm at now. And he goes out to New Mexico. He takes the money that he had from oil drilling in East Texas, and he goes out to New Mexico, and he hears this legend of these 7 lost Spanish gold mines. This has been a legend for, I don't know, hundreds of years up to this point. And he teams up with a local police officer who's got access to everything. And together over the course of a couple years, like I think from 55 to 57, it takes them 2 years to find it, and then they find the gold mines. It turns out to be more than 7. It's like 30 or so. And so they open them back up, and they start a gold mining company, and that stays open until from 1958 to 1963 or 64. And then a smelter explodes, and somebody dies, and they lost everything. My family lost all of their wealth. They had like private jets and limousines and all kinds of crazy stuff. And my dad was accidentally born during this time period. So my dad never experienced any of the wealth that my family had.
Did they lose it because of a court case, or was...
We don't really know. There's something, some stupid stuff happened. I don't know the full story, and I don't know if anybody will ever know the full story. There's a lot of questionable things that happened, whether it was my family was making mistakes, or there were other people that were involved in the company as well, and some of them apparently ran off with the money. All these people are dead now, though, so I have no idea. But I know that my dad didn't experience any of it. My dad spent his whole life, he couldn't be interested in these things. He had to climb out of poverty. But he would tell me the stories, and I would hear the stories from my grandpa, and it inspired me, and I wished I could see it and experience it. Taking another step back, the mines that they were exploring were going down hundreds of feet into the ground, and they were way bigger than they expected. The Spanish had huge mines, and I have these maps up on my walls that are I can't ever publicly release them, but I have these maps up on the wall in my office, and it shows these tunnels like going off into its diorite bedrock, and they go off into the distance, and it says like length unknown, tunnel unexplored, length unknown, tunnel unexplored, and it's just these huge mines that my grandpa didn't get to explore at all. So I've always been inspired by this story.
So the conquistadors made these tunnels or mines?
Yes, the conquistadors made them.
Okay.
Yeah. We think about 1535, somewhere around there, maybe the 1540s. So really old. I mean, almost 500 years old, and it's diorite. So the mines aren't going to collapse. You know.
It's a very soft stone, as we know.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, fascinating, family history that I grew up hearing, and really, I mean, you know, all it was old dusty boxes in our storage unit. Like that's all that was left of this time period. So, or that's all it is left, really. Um, every so often, I would get with my dad, after my grandpa had passed, and we would go out and open up the boxes, and there's all these there was this old magazine called True West, and they would print these stories about modern day frontiersmen, modern day explorers in the 1950s, and they did a couple of magazines on my grandpa.
Wow.
And so we go through and read them, and there's all these little nuggets of information in there. Now, the thing that was the allure around all this was that my grandpa thought that when they closed down the mines, that one day he would be back and he would reopen them, but he never was able to get the money to go back. So he kept the location a secret, and no one knew where these were. And so I would go through, these old Native American artifacts that are in these boxes that we still have, and I would go through them. Like, he would have the maps, but the maps never had a GPS coordinates on it. And
Do you think he encoded it in a way?
yes, he did. He did, because it's in the topography. He has the topography it's drawn perfectly, so you can find the topography and fit it. And I did that. It took me 9 months. And 9 months of consistently working about one day a week trying to figure it out. And so I searched all of New Mexico, and I matched it with the map, and there was no northeast, south, or west either. So on the
Wow.
map, so it was like full on ultra paranoid treasure hunter. He didn't want anybody to know where his plot was. So that was 2022 that I spent 9 months. It was from late 2021 until summer of 22. And then I found where it was. And then I went out there, and I cut through all of these people's, we took a truck early in the morning. I've never told this story. We took a truck early in the morning. We drove 16 hours from my home in San Antonio out to New Mexico. And we took a truck early in the morning to this old service road. The road was so old that you could only see it from satellite imagery. When you're actually there in person, you can't see the lines in the desert anymore. So I'm trying to follow it by GPS. I'm trying to follow this service line to get out there. But we have to go through 6 people's properties, and they have these barbed wire fences. So I have wire cutters. I'm just cutting through people's fences to be able to get there. This was really bad. I was very nervous the whole time I did this, but it was...
Were you armed?
Do what?
Were you armed?
Yeah. I mean...
You have to, right?
Yeah. Always have... you need a gun out in that region for a multitude of things. So we did find the mines. It ended up being way more than he had fully marked, and I still haven't actually seen all of them. It was a huge property, and it was actually twice as big as I thought. There were some old buildings that were still out there. There were these, old bottles and cans laying everywhere, and I'd pick it up and I'd be like, was my grandpa the last person to touch this before he set it down? Just cool stuff. And then we found all the mine entrances, and it was cool. It was like connecting to a lost world. It was like connecting
Literally.
It was connecting directly to my ancestors, the people the guy that my DNA comes from. You know what I mean? It was just, I don't know. It was just, so that's really been, that's kind of like an explanation behind the psychology, I guess, of who I am and why I'm interested in stuff I do. This is what I do is what I was born to do, being into ancient history and exploration. I was born to be what I am. I guess that's sort of where I come from and why I'm motivated to do what I do. Now, my interest isn't the same as my grandpa's. He was very much into gold and Spanish. That's not really my forte. I like lost cities in the jungles of Central and South America and Mexico. I'm also getting drawn into the U.S. now that I moved up to North Carolina. We're in mound country here, and there's more forest. Whereas when I was in Texas, there's fucking nothing in Texas other than creeks with arrowheads. I also got access to a big LIDAR database of the U.S. and I've been marking uncharted areas in the American Southeast, like in the woodlands, stuff that I don't see on archaeological maps, but I can see the mounds through LIDAR. So I'm gonna start doing stuff in the U.S. as well. So, anyways, yeah, that's
So
me.
you started anthropology, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was your
Yeah.
master or
No, just bachelor's. I thought about going back to school to specialize, but I'm not gonna specialize. I just don't need to. I'm much better as a communicator, making content and telling people about different facets of ancient history that I find interesting. And I don't think that I should specialize. But anyways, so I was in college and I was always into ancient history, but it didn't seem practical. Like I
Why?
didn't. Archaeologists, it's a very tough life. It's like the life of an actor. You don't get to choose the archaeological sites you want to get on. They basically get chosen for you, or slots open up and you can apply and you might get this job that you want. But really, you might be when the state is creating a highway, they come across an arrowhead and they hire you to go out there and excavate it. Like that's interesting, but I'm not going to stake my entire life on that, and to make nothing. You don't make any money. It's a hard life, and the divorce rate among archaeologists is really, really high. And, I want to be a happy family man. And, so
you're working your way towards that.
yeah, thank you. And, so I was doing marketing and I hated it. And I wasn't passing my classes. I had a sub 2 GPA. It's horrible. I was going to fail college. And until I had a conversation, I read the book, The Lost City of Z, and I watched the movie with my girlfriend, who's my wife now. And man, something about that guy's story, especially when I watched the movie, I was like, I must have been 20. It reminded me of myself and of my family because, one of Percy's have you seen the movie?
Yes. Yeah.
It's
a great movie.
One of his motivations is to go out there to reclaim his family name, to show that to reclaim the honor of his family and defend his family name. And he has that kind of heritage motivation behind him to be this great man. And man, something about that just like woke me up. It just shook my snow globe. You know what I mean? And so I couldn't shake it after that. I was like, no, history is what I love. It's what I've always loved. And I'm like ignoring it. I mean, what am I doing? So I changed everything. I appealed to the dean and I was like, I want to change, I don't want to be on academic suspension. I want to change my major. I want to do anthropology. And then they were really skeptical of that. So I had to write this, paper. So I wrote a paper on the lost cities of the Amazon, and they liked it a lot. So they let me into the anthropology program. So destroyed my classes after that. From that point on, I had like a 4.0 and just killed it in college.
Yeah, when you find your interest and it's not
Yeah,
an
you
effort
find it interesting.
anymore.
It's easy. It takes no effort. So yeah, I graduated, and the only anthropology job I've had is that I'm a member of the Maya Exploration Center, which is headed up by Dr. Ed Barnhart. And so I take people on educational tours around the Americas. And I did one in Cambodia recently, just for archaeoastronomy. But yeah, that's what I do.
That's
and
cool.
On the flip side of that, I just make my videos and do podcasts and stuff like this. So, trying to make all of this work.
But you also do explorations, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen those videos when you are in the snake boots, running through the jungle. It's actually amazing.
Oh, thanks, man.
Like,
yeah.
Have you ever considered using some kind of low-level LIDAR?
Yeah.
Do you have access to these?
I get asked this. You can't, man. It's not possible. Not that it's not physically possible. It's that the government
You need
would stop
permits
you.
and
Yeah, and they'll never give me a permit. It's just I have to do it blind and I have to do it on foot. It's just the way it is. Um, the government will never let me because I'm an American. They only want their locals to do it.
Could you hire
Definitely.
someone there?
Yeah, I could work through a local archaeologist, right? Like I could be working with a
Like Dr.
local.
Barnhart?
No. It'd have to be a Mexican
Okay.
archaeologist. Like if I was in Mexico or if I was in Peru, it'd have to be a Peruvian. These countries are pretty much done with having white Europeans go in and like get the credit for stuff, right? So, which I mean, that's what they want to do. That's what they can do. Um, so they want a Mexican archaeologist to be tied to all these things and be the face of it. And it's in their country. It's fine. But that's just the way it is. And it makes things very political and it's just hard to get things done. So it's better for me to just go in blind and do it on my own, right? So and it's much easier, there's a lot of, there's just a lot of hoops to jump through in archaeology, a lot. Like it's so political. I don't agree with, I'm not really into like the archaeological conspiracy stuff. It's just bureaucracy. It's just there's a lot of hoops to go through with archaeology. There's a lot of considerations. You're considering the the nation's patrimony. Like, okay, these are indigenous sites that you're looking for. Should it be an indigenous archaeologist who's heading up the project that's doing this? Okay, well, is this ethical on how many different levels and who should be involved? There's a lot of considerations, and it's kind of like as a foreigner looking in, I can't really judge them. It's just it's their country. It's what they do. I guess that's the way it's going to be.
Sounds more tough than in Europe, actually.
Yeah, I bet it is. Now, that said, Mexican archaeology is the finest in the world. Like INA, they're some of the best archaeologists on the planet. They're on it. So I can't knock them. They do everything very well. It's not at all like Egyptology. You go to Egypt, that place is a freaking mess, man. But Mexico is not.
In Mexico, they are using modern tech, or it's more like the traditional archaeology?
Oh, a lot of modern. Yeah. They have everything. Mexican archaeology might be the most advanced in the world.
Really?
Yeah, they've got all the LIDAR. I mean, they've LIDAR scanned way more than people realize. They've LIDAR scanned the city of Palenque. They've LIDAR scanned Tikal, Caracol. They've LIDAR scanned El Mirador. But not all of these things get released, to the public. You have to appeal for the information privately.
Can you do it as a private person, or you have to be
No.
scholar or academic? Or
You would have to be a scholar and academic. Yeah, it's all highly regulated. Now, the other reason that a guy like me can't just send a LiDAR drone up is there's illegal things that go on in the jungle.
Oh, okay, I see.
And those illegal things have something to say about what happens in the government as well. You know what I'm saying? And I don't, the last thing I want to do is get involved in stuff like that, so it's better for me to just be ultra careful and go in blind and just do it on my own and be hyper respectful of everybody that I meet. Mexico is very multifaceted. There's a lot going on there. But yeah, so.
Do you have any scary stories from these private under the fence explorations?
Yes.
Which you can tell?
Yeah. All right. I can't say what country I was in. All I can say is I saw the remnants of 4 dudes that got beheaded, and that's about all I can say. I can't say where I was at. I've never said that before. Yeah, I saw the remnants of 4 guys who got beheaded, and that was interesting. That was on the side of the road, and they were, probably wrapped up in some things they shouldn't have been involved in. Another story is I was in a country in Latin America, and I had spent a few days with a Russian archaeologist. He was in his early 30s, so we kind of got along, similar age. And we were just talking all about crazy stuff. He told me that he had been called back to Moscow before he was an Aztec specialist, a Russian archaeologist who specialized in Aztec archaeology, and he got called back to Moscow at personal request of Vladimir Putin to identify whether or not an artifact was legitimate and whether or not it was Aztec. And he said that when he got there, he flew into this airport, and it was like this big airplane hangar. It was like Area 51, something like this.
Yeah.
And it just boxes and boxes and shelves. And he said he's on this golf cart going between these airplane hangars that are full of shelves of these different artifacts. And he said that some of the doors are open, and as he's passing, he can see what looks like Egyptian artifacts on the on these shelves, and these are just things that the Russian government has collected, probably the private collection of Vladimir Putin himself, right? And so he goes into this warehouse, and it's full of Aztec artifacts from Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, that he said that are bigger and more impressive than anything he'd ever seen on display in Mexico City. Keep in mind, the Mexico City Museum of Anthropology is a world-class museum. It's one of the largest, most impressive museums anywhere in the world, with some of the biggest artifacts from Mesoamerica. And he said that there was stuff there he'd never seen before. And I was like, oh, wow, it was a crazy story. The next week, I'm in the Yucatan. And so the week before, I'd spent it with a Russian archaeologist. Then the next week, I'm out on an expedition in the Yucatan. And I'm staying at Uxmal, and I get an email from a Russian that is telling me that on my expeditions and my exploration, if I ever come across an artifact that I've found personally, that he will meet me anywhere in Mexico and purchase it from me, which is highly illegal. Okay. I would never, ever, ever, ever do something like that. If I found an artifact, I wouldn't even pick it up. I've told people, and
Did you?
have I
Ever?
ever found
Yeah.
something? If I had, I wouldn't tell you, but no, I have not. I have not. That's like really taboo. You know what I mean? You kind of don't want to find an individual artifact. It would be cool to find a temple, because I can't run away with a temple, right? You can't be accused of running away with a temple. I would not want to find an artifact.
But you can always call an archaeologist and
You could. Yeah. You just have to be really careful. You know what I mean? There's a lot of bad things that could happen. Like, I'm really a pretty mellow, like very easygoing guy. But some of the people that come on my expeditions, I think that sometimes they're surprised at how serious I get. Like, I tell people, if you find something and you touch it and anything happens to you, I will leave you in Mexico. I'm telling you right now not to do that. And I've had people joke around about like, oh, if I find something, they don't even come. Like, just because you said the joke, I'm not fucking around. Like, don't do that. And one, you're messing around with ancient history. It's priceless. Just respect it. Two, don't ruin your own life over a piece of pottery or a piece of jade or something like that. Jeez. Sorry, there's just a lot of stupid people that do stupid stuff. So I would never fool around with like anything that has to do with looting. Never. So this email had a timer on the bottom. He basically told me that he'd meet me anywhere in Mexico and he would purchase it from me. And it was like, it didn't say email will self-destruct, but it was something akin to that. And there was a timer, and I didn't know what to do. It was open it was when I looked at it, it had like 56, 55, 54, 53. And so I just closed the email, and I didn't know what to do.
screenshot.
I didn't even screenshot it. I think I called Dr. Barnhart, and he thought it was pretty amusing, and he's like, well, just don't respond to it. And so obviously I didn't respond. And I opened back up the email, because in the email it was a link. It was like some kind of secure link, and I opened it up, and then all of a sudden it was just gone. So all the evidence of it was gone. Anyways, yeah, that was interesting. I don't know. So it showed me that the black market of artifacts is alive and well and easily accessible. If you want, they would just come to you like DoorDash. And Jeez. Anyways, yeah, you could if you wanted to get involved in bad stuff, you could easily because it tries to find you. You know. Let me think of what else. Other than coming across like fertile ant snakes and stuff like that,
Mm.
I've never really had bad experiences. I've never had somebody threaten me. I've never really been in mortal danger. Just I've seen the doorway into danger and avoided it. You know what I mean? And just walked the other way.
Yeah.
Um,
No cartels or these kind of stuff.
no, you kind of got to go out of your way to look for trouble with the cartel. They don't want to. They don't want to cause a scene, or the last thing they want is huge headlines is like American tourist gets something 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 by the cartel. That
Mm.
disrupts their business, and I'm sure that they're everywhere, but nobody's ever messed with me. Nobody's ever said anything to me. I don't feel like I'm personally in danger of anything when I'm out in Mexico or Central America or South America. South America, you don't feel like you're in danger of anything at all. Everybody's so nice. Um, so yeah. I think that the biggest dangers is definitely snakes. You know, I'm very cautious of snakes, and I've been really lucky. I've seen a fertile ants twice, which is like, that's my biggest nightmare snake.
It's the most poisonous one, or
On this side of the planet,
yeah.
yeah. There's nothing in the Well, you have a coral snake, but a coral snake, the mouth of it is like as big as your pinky fingernail, and they can't really bite you that easily, and they're also not aggressive.
D- the coral is the brown or black and
It's
red one, or it's
red and yellow.
red and yellow.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so it's quite easy to
Yeah. Well,
recognize.
so you have the thing that's like red and yellow, kill a fellow, red and black, friend of Jack. So if the red is touching the yellow, then it's venomous. But now
Okay.
there are coral snakes that are starting to, because they get killed so much, they're starting to evolve the red and black pattern, like
Wow.
yeah, they're starting to evolve the red and black pattern, which is the non-venomous snake, the milk snake. And so now people are getting bit by what they think are milk snakes because they're picking them up, and it turns out a coral snake, and then they die. So the coral snake and the fertile ants are the two most venomous on this side of the planet, but the fertile ants is by far more deadly because they're aggressive and they'll bite you, and they're large. A fertile ant's head can be this big. So yeah,
Jesus.
they can get really big. You don't think it, but they can.
But do you carry some kind of serum or anti-venom? I don't know.
No.
With
You,
you,
you
or
got to go to a hospital. You have to go to a hospital. There's nothing.
no other chance.
Yeah, there's nothing you could carry on you that could help
Okay.
you. But I've never been bit, luckily. And I don't carry anything on me to kill the snakes either. I mean, I guess I could carry a machete, but geez, I wouldn't want to be swinging at a snake that big, because they watch you. They can read your body language and your movement. And if you start swinging towards them, they're pit vipers, so they're looking at the heat signature. There's no heat
Okay.
signature coming off of the machete. The only heat signature is on your fist because it sees your heat signature coming down to it. So it'll strike you back, and it'll bite the hand that's trying to hit it with the machete. And then all of a sudden you have a hand completely polluted with 300 milligrams of
Venom.
the worst kind of venom imaginable. And then by the time you get to the hospital, your hand's all swollen and black, and you'll fall asleep while they're operating on you, and when you wake up, you might not have a hand. So you have to be really careful. Yeah.
But do you have any chance for like a heli rescue or something like that?
Oh God. Maybe
Or
in the future when I have more resources, but no, just
and I assume the closest hospital is like hours away. If you are in the jungle,
yeah, it just depends on where you're at. Yes, but yeah,
in
typically,
generally speaking,
yeah. Generally speaking, hours. However many.
is it enough?
Do what?
Isn't it that too much, or do you have enough time?
No, it just
For
depends.
that?
It really just depends on who you are, I guess, and how your body reacts to
Okay,
the venom.
yeah.
Some people, you'll die instantly.
Fuck.
If you're allergic to the venom, you're screwed. If you're a fully grown, healthy adult male, you probably have like 24 hours to get
Okay.
to get there. But you need people helping you. It's not like you're not going to be awake. If you get bit by a fertile ant snake, you'll be asleep within a couple hours or a few hours. Your body you'll just lay back and fall asleep. And if you didn't have anybody helping you, you just die.
Yeah.
The venom you just succumb to the venom so quickly. You know, I interviewed a guy once. His name's Pete Bethune, and he was walking through the jungles in Costa Rica, and he got bit by a fertile ants. And he said that the effect that it has on you is like you've taken, like you've taken 10 times the dose of Benadryl or antihistamines, and you cannot keep your eyes open. You're just falling asleep, and it's that neurotoxin,
Mm.
in you that it just slows you down until you fall asleep, and then the venom will kill you while you're asleep. It's crazy stuff, man.
Jesus.
So that kind of stuff haunts me in my dreams. I'll have dreams where I'm like in some unfortunate situation that I'm taking my wife and my sister and my mom through the jungle, and it's like ridden with snakes, and it's all kinds of snakes, and I don't know. I dream about snakes quite often. Yeah, so I probably have a phobia of them.
Really?
I think so. Yeah, they fascinate me. They fascinate me because of how deadly they are. I think that's why I like them so much, but I'm also very scared of them. Yeah, I have an irrational fear of snakes. No matter where I'm at, if I'm outside, I'm always looking for them. Yeah.
You touched upon Palenque and Pakal.
Mm-hmm.
It was fascinating to me when I was looking. I think it was probably the Kon-Tiki or the Ra expedition movie of Thor Heyerdahl.
Yeah. Thor
When he
Heyerdahl.
visited the site, and he somehow connected that site to Egypt, like the building of, is it the Sun Temple in Palenque?
Well,
where they had this red room for Pakal.
Okay, so if it's Pakal, it's going to be probably it's going to be the Temple of Inscriptions.
Inscriptions.
Yeah.
Pakal was the one with the jade mask, right?
Well, they all have jade masks.
All have.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But Thor somehow connected that building, like these triangular shape structures, to the Egyptian. I think it was the Grand Gallery, maybe.
Yeah. I have not read. I think I read Kon-Tiki, but he has other ones. Like he has like the Tigris expedition, and he has another one that he does with an Egyptian reed raft, and I never read
the
those.
Ra.
Yeah.
Ra 1 and
the
2.
Raw expedition. That's
Yeah.
right. I never read those.
Have you seen any of the movies?
I haven't. No.
Because he actually filmed it.
I know. Yeah. Well, I'm ashamed to say I haven't seen them, but I've used some of the footage from them for my videos. But Thor is one of those things. Not that I'm fascinated by him and his story, but it's one of those things. Once I start it, I'm gonna have to go from beginning to end. It's kind of like why I haven't read Harry Potter, because it's not like I'm just gonna read the Sorcerer's Stone, or the Philosopher's Stone. You got to go from there to Deathly Hallows. Like you got to go all the way through, and that's kind of how it is. If I'm gonna start Thor Heyerdahl, I've got to read it all. Kind of like when I got into Hiram Bingham, if you're familiar with him. Hiram Bingham discovered Machu Picchu.
Okay.
And he wrote several books about ancient Peru. And so when I started learning about him, I had to read everything. So I need to get into Thor Heyerdahl at some point. I think it's also the monumentality of what he achieved is fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah.
He sailed those rafts. The Kon-Tiki expedition is insane. Sailing out to French Polynesia from South America.
Yeah.
Good Lord, man.
If you ever have the chance to visit Norway, Oslo, you should visit the Kon-Tiki Museum.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
They have the Kon-Tiki raft in there. Also the Ra.
The real Kon-Tiki raft?
I think so.
How big is it?
Like this room. Till the sofa.
Yeah.
Or a little bit wider.
Yeah.
It's huge. But it's fascinating to me that no one heard about this German team who actually sampled the Khufu graffiti in the Great Pyramid. Have you heard about their missions? Or one of the guys, the leader of this entire mission is called Abora, and he basically continued Thor's journey or quest, because Thor was only using the streams. He didn't steer or steer the boats. But these German guys, actually, they are also building these reed boats, but they realized that, I'm sure you have seen the Nagada pottery, where they are depicting the boats.
Yeah, of course I have.
With the vertical lines.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people think that those are the rowers of the
Oh
of the
yeah, yeah.
boats.
So on the Nakata pottery,
Yeah.
you have the little boat and you have the vertical
Yeah,
lines that are coming
exactly.
underneath it. Yeah.
But this guy said, "Oh no, that's a lee boat, lee board. That's the term in sailing. So they can use those. It's not a rower. It's kind of a fixed plank or something on the side of the boat, and they can turn. They can steer the boat by those.
Interesting.
And they could like control the boat to touch islands on the way, so they don't have to use the streams, and they don't have to go around the world. They can just target islands with reed boats. So
that's it. Really, very,
very
interesting.
interesting that
Yeah.
Nagada people already knew this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, man, that I guarantee you, we think of Nakata culture, and for anybody listening, Nakata culture is pre-dynastic Egypt.
Yeah.
So
Vases.
let's call it 3,200 BC to 3,500, maybe all the way even back to 4,000 BC. Early times. But what's interesting is for sailing, it's not early. People were sailing all the way out to Australia 40,000 years ago.
And it's not easier than going through America.
No. And so, sailing has been around since well during the time of the Neanderthal. So, you think about all the knowledge and the things that those people must have learned. The Nakata were probably, I guarantee they knew how to navigate the water pretty freaking well. And I bet a lot of people in the ancient world much, much, much earlier on than we realize. Freaking, Cyprus had people inhabiting it 70,000 years ago. The island of Crete was 50,000 years ago. There were people arriving on Crete. So, sailing had been around for quite a long time. Easter Island, have you ever been there?
No, unfortunately not.
So the Rapa Nui people, in their lore, they say that the founders of Rapa Nui did not discover it. You think that Easter Island, is in the middle of the Southeast Pacific Ocean. People just somehow stumbled across it, or maybe they're lost voyagers that see this little, speck of land and they go to it and they have nowhere else to go, so they just make it work there. No, their lore is that the founders of Rapa Nui chose to go to Rapa Nui. So how far back does the knowledge of the location of this island actually go back in time,
Well, the water level was also much lower
It was
time, right? So it's like there was a high chance that there was a bridge or something
I have seen that there was a bridge from there to South America. You can see where the islands may appear. I have no idea if there's any validity to that or not. You can see the possibility, and maybe at some point there really was. But as far as DNA evidence, where we could have to say these people and these people are related this far back in time at the same time that these islands would have appeared, I have no idea.
Not talking about the chickens and the ginger.
Yeah.
Same.
So, so it's I don't know, man. The ancient seafaring goes back much further than, not much further than we realize, but we just have such an incomplete understanding of what exactly people were up to, especially when it comes to sailing, and water really likes to destroy all archaeology, so most evidence that we have of sailing is gone.
Well, we have evidence of tobacco and cocaine in mummies, so it's also interesting. The same guy actually did his PhD on the same guy who is sailing after Thor. His name is Dominik Görlitz.
Mm-hmm.
He did his PhD on these cocaine and tobacco mummies, basically. That's very interesting. That why did they have those?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough because, if they have cocaine and tobacco in them, well, why doesn't corn just pop up? Everybody would have wanted corn in the old world. Potatoes should pop up too. Like, how do you explain, these goods leaving the Americas and getting back to the old world, without, the staple crops of the Americas following along with it? It's a big mystery. I find that stuff really fascinating. Have you ever heard of Monument 13 in the Olmec?
The bearded.
Yeah, maybe you've seen me
guy.
talk about it before.
Yeah, or
And
with the turban, right?
yeah. He's there's a cylindrical monument in the Olmec world, and I mean, Olmec literature calls him the traveler. Or when I say literature, I mean Olmec archaeologists call him the traveler. He's got a foot glyph next to him on his left side, and he's like, I think they call it presenting, where he's walking forward, and you have his name glyph next to him, which is just this foot that's walking forward. So they call him the traveler or the walker or whatever. And he's holding this flag in his hand. He's got this big thick mustache with this long beard. He's got this turban flowing down behind him, and he's got these pointed boots on. And there's nothing about him that looks Mesoamerican whatsoever. I mean, Mesoamericans don't have turbans. They don't typically have big, thick, bushy beards. Flags are not a Native American thing. Flags come from the Old World. In fact, they come from the Nakata culture. At least we think that one of the first time flags appear in the ancient world is the Nakata culture. They have these rods sitting up on top of their boats, and they have a flag on. You can see it on the pottery, and that flag depicts what village or wherever town that they were from as they're sailing up and down the Nile. Or at least we think that that's one of the first places that they've found that it appears, but it's not a Native American thing. And Native Americans also don't have big pointed boots that come halfway up your calves either. So, I look at that and I'm like, I don't know, man. That guy might be a visitor to the Olmec realm.
It's hard to find that depiction online.
It is hard. Yeah. There's not that many photos of it. There's really not that many photos of anything in the Olmec world other than the heads. The heads dominate everything, but the heads are not the most important thing in the Olmec world. It's by far the were-jaguar, this half human, half jaguar thing that exists. It's like it's like something that the shamans are able to conjure or turn into, this human this anthropomorphic jaguar being. That's by far more important in the Olmec realm, but you'd never know that if you didn't like really study it.
Do you think they came from Asia or Africa?
Yeah, I think they came from Asia. I think that they're all Asians, Asiatic, maybe Polynesian too, but I think that they're probably mixed with people who came over, down from Alaska and wandering into the Americas. And then I think probably they have the DNA of people that sailed across the Pacific,
It's in the name, Polynesian.
Say it again?
It's in the name, Polynesian.
Yeah, Polynesian. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that they're Asian. Yeah. I think that there may be a depiction of one African guy in the Olmec realm. The Spanish name for this monument is El Negro. He's got these high cheekbones, this big jawline, and he's got these strong like brow ridges, and he's got the widow's peak with like the afro curly hair. And man, he just does not look Olmec at all. He looks like he's African. But it's just one single monument. That's it. That looks like this. And I look at that, and they say it's an anthropomorphic howler monkey. It's not a freaking howler monkey. It's a human. And so which is like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know. Archaeologists, some of them really want to say that this is a howler monkey. It's just it's kind of like, I think that's an African man. What I think I guess if I'm really speculating, what it could be is a survivor of a reed African raft sometime around 900 BC that gets caught adrift in the Atlantic, and somehow these people survive. And if you follow that, if you go straight out the gates of Gibraltar from the Mediterranean west into the Atlantic Ocean, you go out a little bit too far, there is a current that will drag you down into the Caribbean. And if around 900 BC or so, during the time of the Olmecs, if you get dragged into the Caribbean, you're going to run into the Olmecs. It's the empire of Mesoamerica at that time. And we know that they have connections out into the Caribbean. So you're going to get pulled into like the gravity of the Olmec realm. And I don't know. I think that this statue of this African looking guy, maybe he was a captive, like, one African dude survives, and so the Olmecs just capture him, and he's like this trophy, and they make this statue monument looking thing out of him. I don't know. That's just me BSing, but
Thor Heyerdahl did it. So he sailed from Morocco to Cuba or
Hmm. Yep.
Yucatan or something.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. Well, and it's possible, and you have thousands of years with millions of people living. It probably did happen. Probably maybe on more than one occasion, some poor guy gets drugged out in the ocean to the opposite side of the planet. He's never going to see home again, and when he does arrive, he's probably going to get slaughtered. Or he's going to get captured, or something bad's going to happen to him, most likely. So, anyways, yeah.
Why do you think this narrative is not accepted by the academia, that they could sail
Because
long distances?
Because
No evidence.
it's
Or-
too speculative.
Mhm.
It's I don't know, man. I mean,
'Cause that would change a lot of things.
yeah, and we're kind of in the zone now where I think that academia probably goes through like different phases. They go through different I don't know, they go through different trends. 200 years ago, archaeologists were very speculative and really interested in some of these large, grand ideas. And then as it becomes more and more refined, the scope of people's focus becomes more and more narrow. And I think the scope of what they think is possible also becomes more and more narrow. And I think we're in just one of those narrow time periods right now. And I think younger archaeologists who work their way up the ranks will probably open that back up, and then we'll get into more of an open speculative era again. I think we're just living through like a narrow era right now, and it's gonna pass at some point.
It's very interesting to see when we are at museums. We have been so far at 3 museums to scan the pre-dynastic vases, and we're trying to tell the story to the curator who is with us during the scanning. And you can see that sometimes they are open to this idea that some tools are really missing from the records, but you can see the resilience in them that couldn't it be like the way we are describing it, but by chance, or they had more time, they could have those tools, or isn't it possible with the easier tools or simpler tools? So you can see the resistance, but at the same time you can see that they are, not all of them, but most of them are open to these modern explanations. It doesn't mean that they will accept it, but they are, at least they are listening to it, and you can have a constructive conversation with them.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's also this this illogical, stupid thing that humans do where when somebody you don't know comes into your field of expertise and starts, trying to explain something to you, you automatically have this defense up of you don't want to be open to them. It's like this stupid, innate, egotistical thing that we have in us, and I think a lot of people in a lot of fields suffer from that, and we hyper focus on it in archaeology because that's what we love, and I think it's just one of those like innate things where you're not a part of the club, you're an outsider coming in trying to explain to archaeologists things that you notice in the archaeological realm that don't make sense or are interesting, or things that you feel like you can explain because you have a different perspective than a traditionally trained archaeologist. You have this perspective that's in, machining and engineering, and you recognize something in archaeology that's more applicable to, or aspects of this artifact that can be explained through your own expertise. So you're trying to come in from outside the club and, in a way, do their job for them, and they don't want that to happen. And it's not. Maybe it's not even something that they're even consciously aware of. They're just automatically resistant to it.
I'm sure.
And then it doesn't help that nowadays the feud between archaeologists and the outsiders has been going on for so long that nobody even knows why it happened in the first place or why all this stuff began. Like, you and I grew up in this world where academics are at war with Graham Hancock, and it happened before you and I were born. And so I grow up reading Graham Hancock's book, kind of thinking like, man, some of these archaeologists are just real assholes. Like, why are these people so resistant to it? And it's like, it's completely illogical. Like, what are people at odds against each other for? All of us are just
Yeah.
interested in the ancient world. It's just all of it's just fucking silly. It's just stupid. I've been in this space long enough that I have realized that it's just all stupid. And the reason that we have problems is because everyone is human, and like
Ego.
some archaeologists do excellent archaeological work. You read their thesis paper and it's like, Jesus Christ, like the depth that you dove in to understand this and explain this, and the technicality of what you're writing is ridiculous. It's amazing that someone can write this, and be this sophisticated. But yet they're still just a human. They still do stupid shit. Everybody does. And it's like, it's crazy. We're trying to navigate through data of an ancient world, and everything needs to really be done well, but yet we're all just human beings that constantly fuck it all up. So I don't know, that I'm on my soapbox about that, but it's just, human error, good Lord, it makes everything so muddy and so messy. You know
And
what I mean?
ego.
Yeah, well,
And
yeah,
ego.
but that's, I guess that's what I mean by human error. It's
Okay.
yeah, well, human error in the process, but also just the error of being human is that we're egotistical.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And that really messes things up a lot. It's like, how quickly do you see somebody who's in the quote unquote pseudo archaeological realm and an archaeologist, they start going at it because of the way that they see data differently, and then a few months later it's personal attacks against each other, and it's like, where did the personal attacks come
We
from?
have seen that. Yeah.
So it's just, it's like, it's not even about the archaeology. That's the thing. That's what I think that this is. I think it's personal feuds now. I think there are a lot of archaeologists who have this they have this knee-jerk reaction to anything in the pseudo-archaeological realm because the bickering has become personal. So I think a lot of these archaeologists are automatically opposed to the vase scanning topic because they know it's kind of Hancockian. It's in this pseudo-archaeological space, and they really don't like Hancock. So just immediately they're opposed to it. And it's just a human compulsion to be that way. They're not, if they were to really sit around and think about it and have a normal conversation with somebody, I think that at the end they'd probably come away with, oh, those vases are pretty freaking interesting, actually.
And that's the conclusion, actually, after I don't know, a few minutes of discussion with the archaeologists in the museums. We're coming from the technical perspective, and they are coming from their narrative, basically. Maybe we never meet, but the conclusion, which we all got, that these are fucking amazing pieces.
Yeah.
They have their own explanation why. We're trying to find our explanations why. But
what do you think the vases were used for?
Guinness?
You think so?
No, I have no idea. It's fascinating to me, why would someone go for such a extraordinary work and task to have a container which will hold something.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why. And this is, are you familiar with Chris King?
No.
He is in the team. He's a precision manufacturing expert. Are you a biker?
Am I a biker? No.
No. So Chris King is he has a brand. It's called Chris King Precision Components, and he is producing high precision headsets and hubsets for high-end bikes. So he's coming with us to the museum scans, and he's trying to explain his perspective to the museum staff from the manufacturing point of view. And he had this thought that why would you make it so round? Well, what's the point of it? It will hold anyway.
Yeah.
You can do it if you have the tools already capable of that, and it's just easy. So to answer your question, what they were holding in those, I think we should find the answer to the question who made those, and because probably the civilization who made those were holding something different in these containers than, for example, the Egyptians or the Nagada. Whoever made those, I have no idea. I don't like to speculate, but I suppose that these was probably not made by the Egyptians, not all of them. So I have no idea what they were holding into this. Maybe oils in the later times.
Yeah.
But
one of the things that has become very apparent to me when studying ancient people is that the things that I deem to be logical and to make sense have fucking nothing to do with ancient people.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do with them. It's like they're not me, I'm not them. They live on a completely different planet than I do. Literally, utterly, I can't even stress this enough, utterly, completely different reality. They're nothing like us. We're studying aliens. Ancient Egyptians have approximately zero in common with you and I, other than they like to party and have sex. That's it. That's our only similarity.
Basic human nature, yeah.
Yeah, they like to kill each other, party, and have sex. Okay. So, we all agree on that. But other than that, like their worldview, the way they go throughout their lives, their sense of ethics, their societal norms, completely different, utterly different. How many cultures in the future are going to look back and go, why did people spend $500,000 on a Patek watch? It tells time. Why the heck do we have this little $130 G-Shock watch, but you have a $500,000 Patek watch and they both tell time? What is the purpose of these things? It can't just be to tell time, but it is. It just, we do some weird stuff, we have some weird obsessions. And, the most, like, what if it is, I guess this is something I think about, is like, what if it is the most boring answer and there are ancient Egyptians that are like, these fucking weirdos with their stupid vases walking around thinking that they're something like I would do when I see somebody wearing a super expensive Rolex. I'm like, all that does is tell time. My phone tells time. How many people back then are like, these guys with these stupid vases thinking that they're, better than the rest of us because they have their stupid vase. Hey, my little piece of pottery holds the beer just as well. I'm just kidding, but it's kind of like studying the ancient world. The deeper I get into it, the more I realize that we're just guessing. It's all of our best guess as to what these people are up to, and which is why my very unserious approach to studying ancient history. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm obsessed with this stuff. I am serious about it, but when it comes to like my conclusions, like I'll throw anything out there, and I'm never gonna like attack somebody over their conclusions because, dude, we don't know, man. We just don't know what they're up to. They're I don't know. They're just nothing like us. They're freaking aliens. It's, if you're studying the ancient Maya people, you may as well be studying Martians. If you're studying the ancient Egyptians, you may as well be studying people from planet Pluto because they're nothing like you. And you can't bring any of your modern assumptions into studying the ancient history. You just have to, all you can do, you just have to try to do your best to understand, to try to figure out what the hell is going on.
Yeah,
we're never going to be
trying.
perfect. Yeah. Well, I'm not talking directly just to you. I'm just speaking in general.
Yeah.
But it's and I'm saying that, but it's also not it's not fully possible to get rid of your own personal biases. Like, there's so many. There are so many times where I'm studying ancient people and I say something and I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. And then somebody who's with me on a tour or something that's heard me speak so many times are like, well, wait, what do you mean? You're saying it doesn't make sense, but how many times have you said it doesn't have to make sense to you? And I'm like, oh, that's true. It's hard. Studying the ancient world is really difficult.
It's very interesting that you can see this size vases to these sizes.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot answer the question why, but if you asked, or you asked, what were they holding in these?
Mm-hmm.
What could you hold in this size?
I
Like
th-
perfumes?
yeah,
Why,
yeah,
why,
yeah.
why this size?
So
It's
I'm people talk to me before. Now, sometimes when people are talking, it's good to clarify terms. So like when I say that I think the Egyptians did something, and when somebody else says, "Oh, I think the Egyptians did or not do that," we have to clarify what Egyptians we're talking about because Nakata is still the same DNA as the dynastic Egyptians, but you can differentiate between them and say, "I'm talking about the Nakata." No, I'm talking about the Egyptians. But what you might mean is starting from Dynasty 0 onwards. Then
yeah, that's
those are the
true.
Egyptians.
Yeah,
But I would still call the Nakata people the Egyptians because they're living along the Nile. You
it
know?
was Egypt basically,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
different. I wouldn't. Could I call them a different civilization? Is it accurate?
I don't know.
Check it.
What is civilization? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's so freaking arbitrary. Like, you have it's supposedly you need to have law, you need to have literature, you need to have X, Y, and
Yeah.
Z, but I don't know. But anyways, so I think personally is that it probably, just me personally, if I really try to come up with a realistic explanation, I think I don't think it's like Egyptian beer. I think that beer would be too now I'm saying this because I think it's a liquid. But I don't think that it's beer. I think that it's probably psychedelics. I think that it's probably something to do with like shamanic practices, things that, push you into a different realm. Dude,
Why do you think that?
um, you know, just my own experiences when I mess around with psychedelics and stuff and like last night, dude, I'm laying there looking up at the sky, high as a kite, and and all of a sudden my brain is able to process things in a way that it can't, typically. Like most of the time when I'm standing looking up at the night sky and I'm sober minded, my brain cannot comprehend the fact that I'm actually standing on the side of the planet, staring off into space. My brain just turns it off because it's too crazy for my brain to constantly be processing the fact that that's just space right there. It's not the sky. I'm just standing on the side of a stone and the space is right there. But my brain can comprehend it. And so it's like you just immediately unlock things. It's like your brain inverts the way it normally thinks and you're able to comprehend things. Another perfect example. I had always been thinking about, sometimes like when you get high, you realize like the obscure things in life that our brain just desensitizes us from and turns off. But I'd always thought about like going to Hawaii is so expensive because it's out in the middle of the ocean. It's a luxury to be there, right? Like, the cost of goods is very expensive and everything. And I had just been thinking about like, it's something to strive towards. You have to be, wealthy to be there. And I had never thought about how ridiculous it is that the people who live there complain about how expensive it is. And it's like, yeah, no shit. You're in the middle of the fucking ocean, you know? Anyways, so your brain, you invert like the way you normally think. The patterns of your thought change. And the more I experiment with that, the more I realize like, man, if I had like 1,000 people doing this, but they're doing it for a calculated purpose every day, the little trying to figure out the metaphysical reality of life. What can you have a cult? What kind of epiphanies can they come up with over the course of thousands of years of playing with psychedelics? What kind of crazy things would they understand about the immaterial parts of our reality, And I think that they were probably very aware of the fact. I mean, very aware and intimately tied to the fact that plant-based hallucinogens, natural hallucinogens have a profound effect on us. And so that's why I think that probably, I guess just my own hunch is that they had holy substances in the perfection of the vase itself is like a physical creation of the perfection of the divine. It's like I used to have a better way to say this, but I think it's they're taking part by drinking the substance that's going to be inside of the vase. they are connecting themselves to the holy, the perfect, and divine. And the vase itself is the representation of that. And to achieve something of that kind of perfection is a testament as to what they subscribe to. It's not meant to be easy to make this thing. It's not supposed to be easy because it's a holy task. That's kind of that's kind of one of my thoughts, is that making it is not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be hard. Or maybe it was fucking easy for them to do. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like it would be. And that's kind of what I think is that the vase itself is perfection, and it's the physical representation of what the substance inside of it is supposed to connect you to, which is the divine.
Like
That's
a
my
worldly manifestation of perfection.
Say it again.
Like a worldly or a real manifestation of perfection.
Yeah, a real
Basically.
manifestation of perfection, and that's kind of what they're hoping to achieve. And if you read like ancient Egyptian philosophy from the Old Kingdom, man, it's like, it is just profoundly wise, man. I mean, they're saying things that ring true for all of eternity. These were intensely intelligent people, and I know that they go back beyond the Old Kingdom, but I'm just saying it's like, they're trying to achieve perfection. There were philosophers in ancient Egypt. Greek philosophy is born from Egyptian philosophy. We just don't know about Egyptian philosophy because it was so secretive. But you have these Greeks that are traveling to Egypt and being influenced by them, and then Greek philosophy just blossoms, and it's so well preserved because Greece ends up not being a super important place during, I think it's the Holy Roman Empire, so Greece doesn't get raided and destroyed, so it's well preserved. But we just don't have like the reality of Egyptian philosophy well preserved. But these people are reaching for the divine. They're reaching for excellence, right?
Maybe it was preserved in a way, but destroyed, or
destroyed, hidden. I don't know.
Maybe the Library of Alexandria held them.
Geez. Yeah, well, that's a big one. There's just so many places along the way. Like Egypt was raided so many times, man. At the end of the Old Kingdom, Egypt gets flipped on its head for 300 years. The United States isn't even 300 years old. We talk about these gaps in ancient history, or these periods of time. Like you're like the Old Kingdom, it goes from, God, what, 2800 BC to 2100 BC. That's 700 years of time. That's an insanely long time. That's more than twice the age of the United States. And then they fall into the first intermediate period, which is what, a couple hundred years. And then you have the second intermediate period, which is a couple hundred years or 300 years. And, everything's flipped on its head. Egypt is being ruled by people by raiders from the outside, like desert barbarians. And imagine what gets destroyed during that time period. And I bet you when Egypt puts itself back together and the Middle Kingdom starts, it's probably not even really that similar to the Old Kingdom. It's probably different in many different ways that are undetectable to us today. So the Old Kingdom's a lost civilization in itself. So it's just, dude, the Middle Kingdom begins 1900-ish BC. All right, the Library of Alexandria isn't going to get burned down for 1,850 years. That's how fucking old Egypt is. And Egypt had already been going. The Old Kingdom started like 1,000 years before the Middle Kingdom did. I mean, that's kind of another thing is when people get disappointed by like the young date of the pyramids, like let's call it 2550 BC or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, clearly you never sat down and thought about how long ago, 4,500 years ago.
It always strikes me that Cleopatra is basically closer to us than to the pyramids.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. We think about Cleopatra, go to Alexandria today and look around and think about how long ago the height of Alexandrian civilization was under Cleopatra. And add another 500 years onto that, and that's the minimum date of how far she was from the pyramids. Man, it's just it's an incredibly long time ago. 4,500 years is a long time. It's so old that even at the youngest date, the pyramids are sitting out there in the desert before the rest of the world was getting started.
Yeah.
In Greece, they're still cavemen. In Italy, there's still cavemen. All the way up in, up in Britannica or Britain, those are still, I mean, they have Stonehenge, but, they're not achieving things on the sophistication of what the Egyptians are doing. The Egyptians are still well out in front of everybody else in the ancient world, basically, even at the youngest date of the pyramids. That's how old Egypt is. It's amazing. And that's, again, why when you're studying these people, dude, you have to remove yourself. We have no idea what it was like to be an ancient Egyptian. Another thing is, I think sometimes when people are so confident about their views in the ancient world and like, ancient people wouldn't do this or they wouldn't do that or this doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense. I go, okay, if you could you dive into the perspective of the people who lived in your hometown 1 century ago? Just dive in.
Not really.
Just dive into that perspective for me. Okay, you can't do that. I'm not talking about you in particular, but I'm saying let's go 47 centuries before that, and then let's dive into the perspective of those people. But it's like even when you try to think about people who lived in the same place you live now 100 years ago, then it becomes quickly apparent how difficult it is to get into the heads of an ancient person. Just getting into the head of someone who lived 100 years ago is impossible. Well, it's not impossible, but it takes, man, that society just changes so quickly. Here in Greensboro, North Carolina, 100 years ago, this is a completely different society,
It's a good example when, for example, my mom called her mom in third person. It's so
In
weird.
third person?
Yeah. It's so
How
weird.
do you do that?
Like, it was a sign of how do you say? Respect, basically.
Okay. Interesting.
And we don't do this anymore.
Yeah.
It was just probably the last generation was my parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's weird. So I couldn't get that perspective.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And then, multiply that by 47. Like okay, your ancestors and my ancestors were alive 47 centuries ago. Would 47 centuries ago be 2700 BC? I think it would be. I could be wrong.
And by third person, I mean, probably it's different in Hungarian or it's a little bit different, but it's like Mr. or something like that. So
okay,
showing
okay,
the
okay.
respect,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's not like bros. Hey, how are you? Because in Hungarian we have different. The Hungarian grammar is a little bit different, but we are not saying you to everyone. So when someone comes who you don't know and want to show your respect, you don't say you, but we have a third.
Sure.
Or a different, I don't know the grammatical expression for this, but we have a different rule
Imagine how
for that scenario.
Yeah. Imagine if you just followed your father or your mother's, your paternal or your maternal lineage straight back for 5,000 years. Imagine how much that would just reverse evolve as you went back through time. And then by the time you went back 5,000 years and you saw your, 50 centuries ago grandfather, dude, the facets of his daily life would be like utterly completely different. I find that so interesting.
Different problems.
Completely different problems, completely different societal norms, completely different ways that you would address people. Like there would be things that you can't imagine how much different it would be because it's just so different. It's like trying to imagine what intelligent life could look like on a different planet. You wouldn't be able to imagine it. It would be a combination of elements that you would never come up with, and so that's what I'm saying is like the facets of ancient society would be different combinations of situations that you and I cannot imagine, insights that we cannot possibly fathom, just their day-to-day life is so different. Anyways, but
back to the pyramids.
What
do you think about them? Do you think Egyptians were building it from scratch, repairing them, or just inherited them?
I don't know. I see
I mean, I'm talking about the Giza pyramids specifically.
The Snake Bros, they did an interesting. They have these two really interesting presentations that they do. One's called unfinished, and the other one's called finished. And in the finished presentation, they were going through this evidence that they think that the pyramids were being built over time, or that they were built in multiple different phases, which is not too different than what happens in Mesoamerica. The pyramids in Mesoamerica get built over generations
of each other.
Yeah. And sometimes there can be 7 pyramids inside of one. And so I've seen, people propose the fact that the Giza pyramids could have been completely different structures at first, and then they're built over. But man, I don't know. There's a lot of. It's redundant to say there's a lot of strange stuff about the pyramids in Egypt. I mean, we all know that. As far as what I think that they were used for, man, I don't rightly know. I don't think that the tomb theory explains it enough. It's clearly more than a tomb, I guess my biggest issue with people saying they're absolutely not tombs is the fact that there is let's talk about the Great Pyramid specifically. There is a human-sized box in the King's Chamber. It's a pretty shoddy, little shitty 4th Dynasty red granite box, if I'm being honest. I've seen plenty of other 4th Dynasty sarcophagi that look a hell of a lot better than, the supposed Khufu sarcophagus. Why it looks that way, I don't know.
It's not resembling the perfection of the chamber itself, though.
It doesn't. And but it was definitely inside the chamber when the pyramid, it wasn't moved into the pyramid. It's original. That box is as old as the King's Chamber itself.
Damaged as well. Heavily damaged.
Yeah. Maybe damage can be explained. You had the Caliph Al-Mamun in there. You had other ancient Egyptians who were breaking in there. So who knows, man? Maybe they're messing the thing up. But there was never any hieroglyphs that were carved on it on the inside or on the outside. And 4th Dynasty sarcophagi were being carved. You can go to the Cairo Museum, which I'm sure you've been in. You go to the 4th Dynasty section. There are red granite sarcophagi there that look a hell of a lot better than the most powerful king at the time. Why is that? Man, I have no idea. Why is there an incomplete subterranean chamber and then a seemingly unused queen's chamber, and then the king's chamber is just barren? It's just completely naked, and the sarcophagus is just this shoddy little box. I have no idea. It is so odd to me that it's so odd to me and so inexplicable, and all the other explanations thus far fall short. It being a power plant, it's a pretty hard thing to prove. It's like, you're not going to be able to prove the fact that the pyramid was a power plant. I don't know if it's possible to prove that. All the other explanations pretty much fall short of being proven. Nothing's been proven yet.
What about the water pump?
I don't know about the ram water pump. Why would you need a ram water pump? You have the Nile, the Nile itself created ancient Egypt. It's the whole power of the civilization in itself, and it seasonally inundates itself. Like Egypt just takes care of itself. Like it's basically, it's basically like, here's the keys. Here's your super wealthy civilization that you get for free. That's
but not all year long.
Not all year long. So I don't know about I used to think that until I learned more about Egypt, and then I realized that Egypt basically just takes care of itself, naturally. So you don't need a ram water pump. The fields irrigate themselves, and the Nile inundates itself, and it brings this for anybody listening who doesn't know this, that the Nile seasonally inundates. It floods every year, and it brings this super rich topsoil, and it floods the plains. So the people living in Egypt are not these naked desert dwellers. These are filthy rich people living in a completely green oasis along the Nile that's isolated in the middle of the desert from the rest of the world. So they have everything given to them for free. They don't even have to work for their, they have to farm, but it's not like you're having to work really hard to be super wealthy. And I saw a statistic that was like the work of one man could feed 1,000 men back then. That's how much grain there was,
Wow.
barley and wheat. It was just insane.
Crazy.
So you have this huge surplus of people that don't have to be farmers. So then you have people who become stonemasons and artisans, and you have an army that gets built. That's why Egypt could rise so early and be so successful, is because it's just so easy to grow food there. So you don't need a ram water pump. So I don't know about any of the other explanations. And then the tomb theory itself falls short. All the other alternative theories fall short, and then the tomb theory still doesn't make sense for Giza.
Even the fertilizer, like the theory of land of Chem.
I don't know. I don't know too much about Jeff's theory, to be honest with you. It's a little bit over my head. Like, I would have to really
deep dive
to have an explanation. Now, I've said before that his theory is my favorite of the alternative theories, because it's a compliment to what the Egyptians are already doing. Like, okay, so the pyramids are built to be something that makes Egypt wealthy and powerful and helps them, elevates them above the rest of the ancient world. It's a compliment to the Egyptians themselves, and their way of life, which I think is cool. Like, on that merit alone, I think it's cool. But I don't know about the chemical plant theory. I don't even know enough about freaking chemistry to have much of an opinion on it. But the tomb theory falls short, because I've heard people say, well, if you want to look at well-decorated dynastic tombs, you should go to the New Kingdom. Go look at the Valley of Kings. But that's not true, because 3rd, 2nd, 1st dynasties in Egypt, all the way out in Abydos, the first dynasty, the interior of their tombs are being decorated on limestone walls. Well, there's limestone walls in the Great Pyramid. They're not decorated. We know that they could carve hieroglyphs into granite, because they're doing it all over Egypt in the 4th dynasty. It's not happening inside the Great Pyramid. The greatest pharaoh of all, doesn't put his name inside his own burial chamber.
We only have this small statue of him.
Yeah, well, and that's not to say there weren't a lot of other statues of him that just
Maybe
got
we
destroyed.
just didn't find them, or they got destroyed.
Yeah. So I don't care too much about like the tiny little statue thing. What's the biggest red flag to me is that his name's not carved inside the pyramid. In a place that's irremovable, because you can destroy a statue. You can. What's the statue at the gates of Hercules? Those the world wonders, they're gone. The statue of the Temple of Zeus, that's gone. You can destroy these things, but you can't destroy the pyramid. You can't destroy the walls inside the pyramids, and nobody did. And the fact that not even a cartouche is carved into those walls is just odd to me.
Well, there is a cartouche, but
up in the relieving chambers. Okay, let's go to Djoser's pyramid, or Zoster's pyramid at Saqqara. Down in those subterranean levels, in the limestone bedrock, you can see the hieroglyphs of him visiting divine sanctuaries and performing rituals in the afterlife. And you can see him in the those false doorways. You can see him carved there in that iconic Old Kingdom iconography. It's clearly his pyramid. And yet you don't see that replicated. What? A few generations later in Khufu. That's very strange to me. Senefru himself. Here's another thing. Okay, so Senefru, we attribute to him Maidum, and then the 2 pyramids out at Dashur, the bent pyramid and then the red pyramid. Okay, so inside of Maidum, the bent pyramid and the red pyramid, there's no carvings to be found whatsoever. Have you been in the red pyramid?
No, just the black and Lahoun.
You went inside the black pyramid?
Yeah.
Holy crap, man! Nice job.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
Like
I've never done that.
Very narrow tunnels. It's like almost collapsing on you.
That's really cool. I would love to go. But there's no carvings inside of Senefru's pyramids either. And for anybody watching that doesn't realize, there is another true pyramid like the ones at Giza, and it's the red pyramid. It's a full-on Great Pyramid out in a different desert. Now there's no carvings or hieroglyphs inside any of those either. However, out at the Valley Temple of the Bent Pyramid. It's off limits to go to. I paid a ridiculous amount of money to not one of the guards. I paid to the military to be able to go out to the Valley Temple of the Bent Pyramid. I don't even think Uncharted X has been there, so it's kind of a flex.
Why is it off limits?
Yeah, it's close to a military installation, so they say, but I didn't see a military installation. It's okay. So you went to the Black Pyramid.
Yeah.
You passed right by it. You passed right by the valley.
I think we
that Valley
wanted to
Temple.
get that permit, but we couldn't.
Right.
I think
Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
wanted to.
Yeah, I don't know how I was able to do it. It was me and my German friend Philip. Hi Philip, if you're watching. We paid a lot of money to go there, and they were like, quick. We had to run like 300 yards to get there. Oh, I was so out of breath, and I probably had 10 minutes there. And it's all made out of megalithic limestone. Like they must have been Tura, because it was just like that bright, brilliant, fine-grained white stone. It must have been Tura limestone.
Do you have footage
And-
of that? I
yeah,
could insert here.
yeah, I've got tons of footage of it, lots of photos of it, and big stones, no granite at all. And I did not see any carvings at all on the Valley Temple, and I was like, oh well, that checks out because there's no carvings up in the pyramid. I was wrong. In the new Grand Egyptian Pyramid, they have they showed something that they've never shown before, and
You
it
mean
was
the museum?
the Grand Egyptian Museum, the newest
Yeah.
one. In the Fourth Dynasty section, they have panels which are offering scenes that came from that temple. So there were offering scenes that were put on panels, on limestone panels on the outside or on the inside of the walls of the Bent Pyramid's Valley Temple, and yet nothing inside of it. And those panels show Senefru. You can only see his lower half, like sitting in his throne, but you can see all these people lined up to give him offerings. Nothing inside the pyramid. Why? Why is that?
But they did carve on a lot of things. For example, when Ramses carved on his father's statues and temples, seemingly they respected these monuments. So they didn't even try to carve anything inside.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird to me.
Yeah, that is true. That's interesting. Because I mean, they're breaking into a lot of these pyramids, even in ancient times. So it's interesting that they don't violate the pyramids specifically. They violate a lot of other stuff, though. The Egyptians themselves explicitly, completely demolished some temples to the point that only the foundation exists. Like if you go out to Bubastis, that place looked like a freaking bomb went off in that.
Where is that?
Bubastis, it's the temple of Bubastis. It's up closer to Tanis.
Okay.
So a little bit north of Giza. And I went out there, it looked like a bomb went off on that pyramid or on that temple. I'm not kidding. Like I don't even know how you destroy something so badly. They never attempt to do that to the pyramids, which is, yeah, you're right. That's fascinating. They don't go in and deface the inside of the pyramid.
How do they know that they should respect it, or why did they respect it? I don't know.
Why did they respect it? Yeah, nobody knows that. And so, it gets me thinking about the pyramids. I put out a video, which is like my personal theory on the pyramids. Just I don't feel this strongly about this either. I could be wrong, and I probably am wrong, but I think that they may have been cenotaphs, which are not a false burial in the way that it's meant to be. It's not a false burial in that it's trying to trick you. It's just not the place that he's buried. His Khufu's body was not meant to be in the pyramid. Khafre's body was not meant to be. Menkaura's body was not meant to be. I think that those guys are probably buried somewhere else. And if I had to come up with my very Egyptological explanation of this, I think that the pharaohs have two different versions of their soul. You have the Ka and you have the Ba, and the Ka is like the divine essence, almost like you have the sun god living inside of the pharaoh. And part of me wonders if it's not the divine spiritual essence of the pharaoh that is buried into the pyramid above the ground. You look all over in Egypt. Everyone is buried inside the mountain or underground. It's only a few select burial chambers that are above ground. And I think it all happens in the cult of the sun god. It's all in the cult of the sun god, which is the height of the Fourth Dynasty. Before Senefru, the patron deity is not Ra. It's why do I forget? It's a different god, but it switches to being Ra under Senefru, and then Khufu, you know, seemingly takes it to a new level, and I just wonder if it's not meant to be like the resting place or like the housing or you know it's got to be something that like we can't really comprehend exactly what it means or how it's so significant. But I think it was never meant for the actual physical body of the pharaoh, and I think it's probably likely that those pharaohs are just buried somewhere completely differently, probably down at like Abydos where all the pharaohs before them were originally buried. In fact, there was a German Egyptologist um, in the late 1800s that excavated Amenemhat III's pyramid, and he felt the same way because
Which one is that?
Amenemhat III is
Which pyramid?
it's
Do you know where is it?
no,
Isn't it the Lahun?
it's a minor pyramid. I
minor,
forget the
okay.
name of it. You know, it's basically just a slump of rubble today. You know, it wasn't made out of megalithic stones. It was made out of like the sandstone bricks. I'm sure it looked perfect when it was done, but you know, it just slumps and falls apart later on. But Amenemhat III was like, he's the greatest pharaoh of the Middle Kingdom. Probably the golden period of dynastic Egypt. Like the time you would want to be alive was under his rule. And we don't hear about it because it was such like a tranquil time. You know, we hear about all the tumultuous times, you know, to live in Egypt. But he had two burials, and his pyramid complex is a copy that's like a 1-to-1 scale, but it's smaller, based on multiple aspects of Giza. And his pyramid is in the north. It's not in Dashur. It's a little bit north of Dashur. I think it's near Abu Sir. I could be wrong. I could be wrong about this. But the pyramid is up in the north, and there was no body in it. There was no hieroglyphs inside of the pyramid itself. There was nothing in it. And that same Egyptologist, or an Egyptologist working at the same time, found Amenemhat's burial in the south at Abydos in the ground. So he had two burials at the same time, and his pyramid is based on the design of Old Kingdom pyramids, or you know, the Great Pyramids. And so what this Egyptologist thought is, oh, the pyramids are not the actual burial. All of these guys are being buried in the south, where the first kings in the first dynasties, Dynasty 0 and 1, are being buried. The pyramids are something else. They mean something else. And he called it cenotaph, which is like a symbolic burial. But what it's symbolic of and what it actually means, or the entire full use of it, I don't know, man. I think there's a facet of their understanding of the world, and probably, you know, I think sometimes like, you know, there's a funny joke, and I joke around about it too, where it's like, if archaeologists don't know what something is, they call it a temple, because you know everything gets thrown back to religion. And in the modern world, we kind of like, you know, religion, like, of course it's always, you know, it's something like that. Do what?
Where are the schools if everything is a temple?
What I think it is it's more like, I think that the pyramids and the things around them are cult centers. And I think that if we knew what was going on there, it would fucking blow our minds. Like, okay, dude, look at the effort that they go through to build these temples, and how secretive these people were about the things that they believed. Even Herodotus, when he goes to Egypt, he's constantly writing about how mysterious the mystery schools of Egypt are. I'm like, what the hell are these people doing in these temples? He ends up finding out, and then he doesn't tell us in his histories. So it was something significant. And, you know, the mystery schools in Greece are just, it's just, at least, you know, I think that some Greek archaeologists would disagree with this, but it's probably just a play on what the Egyptians were doing. They're very inspired by Egypt. You look at the first Greek statues, and they're all very still and stoic, just like the Egyptian statues. And eventually they develop the personality, and then, you know, they become the marble busts that we see. But the core, a lot of the core of classical Greek society is inspired by the Egyptians. So you just look at the sacred knowledge that the Greeks had that they never revealed. We have no idea what the Eleusinian mystery school was. We have fucking no idea.
Greeks also got their deities from Egypt, right? So,
well, they believed that they believed that that Greek god, that Egyptian gods were the same as Greek gods, but they got in trouble with Zeus and they had to flee down to Egypt, so they wear animal masks or something like that. It's like a late Greek explanation for this of what the connection is. But yes, it's probably somewhat pulled from Egyptian mythology. And they did the same thing with the Minoans, which is like pre-classical Greek. Minoan mythology has some similarities to ancient Egypt, and so it's like pulling from Egypt. And we know that the Minoans had a relationship with the Egyptians. So yeah, we can kind of look into Greek society and how secretive it was to get an idea of what was also going on in Egypt. But Egypt is so much more ancient that we know even less about it. And so I think that, the tomb theory is just it being simply a tomb really falls short. It's not a complete explanation. And even my idea of them not actually being the real burial, that it means something else, well, it's an incomplete explanation, because I don't know what the hell that something else means. It's just it's a whole facet of their world that's lost to us. You can't detect it in the archaeological record. It's not in the literature. It probably was never meant to be in the literature. It probably purposely was not put in the literature, for the same reason that they don't. It's kind of, I kind of find it silly sometimes when people say, oh, the Egyptians never wrote down how they built the pyramids. Yeah, no shit. Like, no shit, they didn't write down how to build the pyramids, because the pyramids elevate Egypt above everybody else. It's the same reason the Greeks didn't write down what goes on in the Eleusinian mystery schools, because it's not meant for the Persians to know. Why would they want anybody to know how it was done?
It can be destroyed. Like, look at Alexandria. I mean,
exactly.
If you put it in some legends or mysteries or tales, maybe it will be passed down through generations. But if you write it down, well, who knows?
Yeah, if you write it down, oh, that's interesting.
Maybe we wouldn't understand now.
That's interesting, right? If you write it down, it can be destroyed. If you write it down, it can be destroyed, and it can be weaponized and used against you. If you don't write it down, it's easier to protect it and keep it sacred, but yet it's also more fragile in a way. That's kind of interesting. I never thought about that. Like, if you write history down, you can also destroy it. If you don't write it down, you can keep it sacred and protect it.
I don't think it's more fragile if it's not written down.
You don't think so?
Well, if you have a strong, culture, you can keep it safe through legends and stories and mysteries.
That's really interesting, because you think about writing it down would be protecting it. Damn, I never thought about that. That's kind of interesting, actually. That's really interesting. Anyways, man, I don't know what the pyramids were exactly. I have no idea.
What was the most interesting part of Egypt when you were there? I think you visited recently, right?
Yeah.
Last year?
I went in I was there the entire month of October and then the entire month of January. So I spent a pretty good little time there.
Best time probably.
Yeah.
Not
January was great. I've never sweated in Egypt once. I've been there in perfect weather. The most interesting thing about Egypt for me, I really liked visiting Alexandria. I think I'm a lot different than I think everybody in our space kind of has their niches and things that they're interested in, and I find that sometimes my interest is the opposite of what a lot of people's interest is. So,
but that's good.
Yeah. The pyramids are amazing, and I love the pyramids. But there's so many people talking about them. It's like, I don't know what I could possibly add to this conversation. I don't think there's anything I can add to the conversation about the pyramids. And so I'm kind of naturally inclined to what's something else I'm interested in that I don't think enough people are talking about? And then I'll find myself obsessed with something. So my major interest in Egypt is Alexandria. I fucking love that place. At least so ancient Memphis. Let's transport ourselves there. Ancient Memphis, with its long, dusty streets and people walking down every corridor and massive temples and the pyramids off in the distance. That's about all we know about ancient Memphis, and that there were several different regimes of pharaohs that lived there, but we have no literature of what life was like there. We have no literature of where exactly the street corners were, and what roads were where, and what major buildings were where, and what happened in these buildings and the people that live there. We know nothing about them other than the royal family that lived there during several different time periods. We don't know anything about prominent citizens, nothing. Alexandria, we know a lot about that city. We know so much about the prominent citizens that lived there and what the streets looked like. We have maps of what the streets looked like. We know where some of the buildings were at. We have a rough idea of where the library was at, where the Alexander's mausoleum was, where the museum was, where the palisades were, where the Jewish district was, where the Greek district was, where the Egyptian district was. We know so much about this world, but yet all of Alexandria is destroyed. None of it exists today, really. There's some foundations of the Alexandrian Serapeum that are still there. And there's some foundations of temples, and there's some tombs there, or like one temple, and then there's some underground tombs there that go back to the time of the Ptolemies.
Does it have any connections to the other Serapeum where they have those boxes?
It doesn't.
Saqqara?
No, I don't think
it's
that it does.
just the name.
It has an underground labyrinth. It has an underground labyrinth, but it has no boxes. It's just it's an underground labyrinth with some. I don't know. I think it was off limits both times I went, but there wasn't anything significant down there. There's nothing that I think I know that there's an underground portion, and if I did walk through it, there wasn't anything memorable in it. Not like the Serapeum, not like the Serapeum out at Saqqara. So, but I'm obsessed with Alexandria because of how much you can. So if you read through the literature, there's all different ancient writings that mention Alexandria. Maybe the biggest one is Caesar's Civil War. He writes a lot about what it's like to be spending time in Alexandria. And then you can learn a bit from Cicero and some other Roman writings where they're going through Alexandria. But I find it interesting what they're achieving in the city, not just with the library and the museum, but like the megalithic stonework comes back and irrefutably comes back. Like, when you study the pyramids and the Osirian and other sites around Egypt, there's some debate there as to, the Osirian's a perfect example. Is that 19th dynasty, or is it 4th dynasty, or is it older? People think it's 19th dynasty because of Seti.
Yeah.
People think it's 4th dynasty because it's so similar to the Valley Temple. And then people think it's older because there's a lot of evidence that a lot of things are older than we think in Egypt. And we don't really know, where the Osirian comes from, what it was used for, or even who built it. In Alexandria, we definitively know that people in the ancient world relearned how to do this. Like the Lighthouse of Alexandria was built out of 65-ton red Aswan granite stones, and it was within a few feet of being the same height as the Great Pyramid. And it stood until 10 years before Columbus found the Americas. And we know that Ptolemaic Egypt built this thing with the same kind of precision and size that they were doing at least in the Old Kingdom. So
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the knowledge of how to do all of this came back. They figured it all out again.
Or they found the scrolls.
Maybe. But what's unfortunate, but the reason it doesn't get a lot of press or you don't talk about it is because you can't go see the lighthouse today. It doesn't exist. You can't go see the library. You can't go see any of these things. You can't see Alexander's mausoleum. So it's all lost in literature, and literature is not as flashy as actually seeing the real thing.
How do you know it's the same precision?
Because there are descriptions of people who went to go see it in the early 1400s that write about it in the 1300s. There are like Islamic explorers and travelers that are thick books. We have very complete literature from 1,000 years ago of people traveling. I'm sorry. People traveling 1,000 years ago all around the Mediterranean, going to see different sites, and you can read it translated today. It's just thousands of pages long of in-depth descriptions. So you have these Islamic explorers that are going through or Islamic travelers that are going through Egypt and all around the Mediterranean documenting different things. And this one guy went up to, I forget his name, but this is maybe like 1100 AD, so 900 years ago. He goes and visits the Lighthouse of Alexandria, and he said it's like crumbling in ruins because like earthquakes have caused part of it to fall down. But he talks about the size of the stones and how they fit together so perfectly, and his description of it is you're like, whoa, okay, I get an image of what this stonework looks like because you can see it in other places in Egypt. And he talks about the size that he reckons that they're like 65 tons red Aswan granite. And then there's another description somewhere in an even older source, but you can see the blocks yourself. They're laying in the water just off of the shore of the modern day citadel. Like if you're at the citadel in Alexandria and you look over the side, you can see the stones from the lighthouse laying in the water, and they're fucking huge.
There was also a huge gate, right, which was made out of stone.
There was a few large gates.
And they scanned it underwater and assembled it together. I don't know. Maybe it's connected to Alexander the Great. I'm not sure.
Is it Alexandria, or there's another city called Heraklion? That's a little bit
maybe I'm mixing
older.
them up.
They're easy to mix up because the archaeology and the process of the archaeology and the archaeologists are all the same people that work off the shore of Alexandria and at Heraklion. But Heraklion goes back to the late period, which is like 900 BC or something. I'm sure it's older than that, but some of the statues that they found are from late period pharaohs out there. I get Heraklion confused with Alexandria a lot because I think it's easy to confuse. It's really easy to confuse them, and it's right in the same area. So I'm diving into why the Egyptians, or why Egypt, has this resurgence of their ability to erect megaliths and build things that are on the size of the Old Kingdom again at the last chapter. I mean, this is 330 BC until 30 BC is this Ptolemaic period.
Yeah.
And the lighthouse is like a testament to the fact that the Egyptians are now able to build things that are on scale with the pyramids. Not on the scale, but like that are as impressive as the pyramids. And the reason I think that is because the lighthouse was within a few feet of the same height as the Great Pyramid. So I think it was a symbol as to like, look at what we can do. I think that was a deliberate decision. Now, the reason I think that this happened is because when Alexander dies, his best friend Ptolemy, who's not this great god king warrior, becomes governor of Egypt, and then later on you have the successor wars. He just eventually has to become pharaoh of Egypt. And I think that the Ptolemies have to prove to the Egyptian people, the Egyptians are pretty rebellious. They don't like to be ruled by the Greeks at all. And so he had to impress them. He also wanted to impress the Greeks back home, which the Ptolemies were basically kicked out of Greece. They're not really welcome back to Macedon. So he's stuck in Egypt. He's got to make it work. And I think that the early Ptolemies, like Ptolemy 1, 2, and 3, they go vastly out of the Greeks are always interested in ancient Egypt. They're very influenced by the Egyptians. Alexander the Great loved Egypt. And then all of the classical Greeks loved ancient Egypt, like we've established, And so I think that they're genuinely interested in the mysteries of ancient Egypt in the same way that you and I are. And then I think that the Ptolemies have to appeal to the Egyptians and prove to the Egyptians that Egypt can be great, because Egypt is just a backwater dump now. Like by the time Alexander arrives, Egypt hasn't been great for a long time.
Yeah.
And the pyramids are sitting up on the horizon as like a haunting reminder of what the Egyptians used to be. Now they're all just poor peasant farmers living in these backwater dumps and alleyways. Like Egypt is not prosperous at this point. And so the Ptolemies take all of this wealth from Alexander's kingdom, dump it all back into Egypt, and somewhere in there, we don't know exactly how, they figure out how to like restore Egypt to its greatness. And then Egypt rises, like, okay, you have the time of the pyramids, and Egypt just continuously falls until it's just a backwater swamp dump full of poor people. And then in a single generation, it becomes the most powerful nation in the world again, building the
Crazy.
Lighthouse of Alexandria with the wealthiest city that the ancient world had ever and would ever see. There was never a time period in ancient Egypt, as far as we know, that there was ever a city that was as prosperous and as luxurious as the city of Alexandria. And even Rome, 300 years later, or, well, let's say, I don't know, let's say like somewhere between 500 to 300 years later, under the rule of Marcus Aurelius, even Rome would never be as luxurious as Alexandria. They restored Egypt back to like this golden period.
So this money came from Alexander the
It
Great?
came from Alexander's kingdom.
Okay.
Yeah. Egypt was the most powerful province of Alexander's kingdom, also because of the Nile. Egypt is inherently wealthy because of the Nile.
Yeah.
So you have both of these things in combination with each other. The streets of Alexandria were 100 feet wide. It was unprecedented to have a street that wide in the ancient world. Most of the time streets are like 5 feet wide. You know, I mean, you're walking like butting shoulders with people. Sometimes in an ancient city, you would never even see, the sun would never even hit you because the buildings are packed so tightly together. You're literally in the shadows all day long. That's how packed ancient cities would have been. But Alexandria's streets were 100 feet wide, and the entire city was made out of stone so that it could never catch fire and be burned down. Which even Rome didn't. Rome didn't have that. Rome was a big muddy rat hole. Its entire existence, it was a muddy rat hole, with people throwing like poop out their window onto the street below, and it's just an awful place to live. Alexandria was the greatest, was the jewel of the ancient world. Never before or since was there ever anything like it. And I just find that time period so fascinating, and I think that the Ptolemies were forced to do it. They wanted to show the Egyptians what the Egyptians could be again. They were hearkening back to like the deep psychological resonance of the Egyptian people by building the lighthouse and building these huge stone structures with the kind of megalithic stones. And somehow, some way, they were able to figure these things out again. We have papyrus that were found that are written in Greek, of Greeks going out to the pyramids and studying them, like studying the shape of the pyramids. And you can, if you get like a book on ancient Alexandria, it's bound, this little strip of papyrus is bound to be in there. So you had people from Alexandria going down and studying the pyramids. So they're studying ancient Egypt, and they figure out these secrets again, and they're able to achieve all of this again. And you can see the ruins of these stones in the waters of Alexandria. If you were to scuba dive down there, I've seen photos of scuba divers next to these blocks that are like as big as the rectangular pillars in the Osirion, just in the harbors of Alexandria. And we know without a shadow of a doubt, there is no doubt at all, that these things were achieved sometime between 330 BC and 30 BC, because Alexander, you know, we know every step of Alexander's life. There's no period of his life that's like mysterious, or we don't know what he was up to, you know.
So they couldn't reuse those blocks, for example, from
older
older Egyptian buildings.
No, there was nothing there. So you had multiple people who are with Alexander on his campaigns, documenting everything that he's up to. I forget who the chronicler of Alexander's life is, the iconic one. But you also had Ptolemy, who's the first Ptolemaic pharaoh of Egypt, who's Alexander's best friend. He had his own book that he was writing about his own campaigns. Or he writes it later on. He looks back on his life. Anyways, the reason that the city of Alexandria in Egypt exists is because Alexander was looking for the island of Pharos, which is where Odysseus lands in the Odyssey. As he gets sent on his Odyssey around the Eastern Mediterranean, one night Odysseus lands on Pharos Island in Egypt, and probably it's called Pharos because maybe some guy like Odysseus really did land on this little island. And he asked these local fishermen, "Where am I?" And they told him Pharos. Maybe it meant Pharaoh's Island. You know what I mean? We don't really exactly know. But Alexander was obsessed with Homer's work, Iliad and the Odyssey, and apparently he slept with a copy of the Iliad every night. So while he was in Egypt at like 23 or 25 years old, one of the things he's obsessed with is finding this thing called Pharos Island. So he goes to the northern coast of Egypt and goes along it and finds the island called Pharos Island. And while he's on there and he's looking at it, there's this strip of land that's over Lake Mariote, I think, which is the lake that's just south of the city of Alexandria. And he realizes that it's a strong military position, but all there is a fishing village. That's it. It's just these poor fishermen that are there. So we know what the Greeks saw there. There was nothing there. It was just a small fishing village. And so Alexander is like, yeah, this is a great place for us to build a city. It's also not a place that the Egyptians would have ever built a city. The Egyptians want to be way deep down the Nile, way the hell away from the Mediterranean. They didn't even like being on the Mediterranean. That's why, the Egyptians didn't really want many coastal cities. They had one, which is Heraclion, which is an impressive city, granted. But the Egyptians, for the most part, want to be deep down in the Nile, and they want the delta north of them because the delta is very defensive. If people are going to invade Egypt, they got to navigate through the delta first. You don't want to put a city way out there on the Mediterranean where you can just have a war. But the Greeks built all of their cities right on the water. So it's a Greek thing to look at this area and be like, oh yeah, we could build something here. So Alexander hops off his horse. He gets this bag of grain, and he reaches in like in this grain sack because nobody has any chalk, and he starts lining out in grain how he's going to build the city. And so anyways, I say all that to say we have really thorough documentation of Alexander's life, and we know that there was nothing there other than a fishing village called Rhocotis, I think, before Alexander built Alexandria there. So they achieved, they built that city. They built the lighthouse. They lifted those huge blocks up all the way up into the lighthouse. And they didn't have a fucking ramp to do that. How the hell did they do that? And so it's a fascinating little area of history that's very hard to explain because it's all gone. All we have is literature of how great it used to be.
It's fascinating, and also it's fascinating how detailed you know these things. And
yeah.
Actually, you are a great presenter. You can tell a great story and very detailed and not boring details. It's like colorful details. I like your way of presenting.
Sometimes when I'm ranting, I have the little timer in the back of my head, and it's like, dude, I don't know. Sometimes I always worry about like, is what I'm saying just so meticulous and boring? But I'm just, I try to present things in the way that I feel about them. Some people try to sell mystery, but I think if I'm selling anything, it's like selling the romance of the ancient world, selling how wonderful and colorful it really is.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and that's what I want to make it sound good because it is good. I try to speak in the way that I try to put words to the way I feel about the ancient world, and I fucking love it. I'm obsessed with it. It's my it's my happy place. I know that the ancient world was not the happy place to the people that were living in it, but from all the modern BS that I have to live through, imagining what ancient Alexandria once looked like and what the lives were like for the people living there, and people waking up in the morning and walking down Soma Road or Canopic Way, and they're looking up at the mausoleum of Alexander, with him up on top, and across the street is the library of Alexandria, made out of solid marble and Tura limestone and granite, and people coming in and out in the mausoleum next to it, and they're walking down the road, and there's the shore with the boats coming in, and there's horses going by and stuff. It's just like, none of what I described was fiction. All of that shit actually happened, and it's fucking cool.
Have you ever considered helping the developers of the next Assassin's Creed game or something?
I would love that. But they already made Alexandria. Dude, I love walking up.
Is it accurate?
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. Okay. Yeah. It's as accurate as it can be. The core pieces of the city of Alexandria in Assassin's Creed are accurate. The cross section between Sonoma Road and Canopic Way, and like the docks connecting to the backside of Alexandria's library, it's all there. That's pretty freaking accurate, man. It's about as accurate as it can get. There's some stuff in Assassin's Creed that they don't include. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but like, I wish that they had included the Osirion, and there's a couple of other like iconic things that I was surprised that they left out. Did you ever play that?
No.
Oh my dude, what? As much as you love Egypt, I would have thought you'd play Assassin's Creed.
Have
Origins.
no time.
Yeah, I get it. I have no time to play it either. I basically just piddle around. There's like a free roam discovery mode, and maybe once a year I'll sit down and piddle around and go through that. So I would love to do something like that. I hope that they do one on Rome. That's pretty much the last thing that they've never done. I think they did modern Rome like during the Renaissance, or maybe it was Venice, Italy. But
I think it was Venice.
Yeah, but I'd love to see ancient Rome, in Assassin's Creed. But yeah. So.
How was the Rogan experience?
Oh,
I wanted to ask about that.
It was an experience. Man, it was a whirlwind. My life still hasn't slowed down enough for me to be able to look back on it and enjoy it. You
have to pinch yourself sometimes.
Kinda, yeah, kinda. It was something that I always, when I started out on this journey, I knew that was something that was going to happen. It wasn't like if it was going to happen. I knew it was going to. But when it did happen, it was like I don't know. When it did happen, it's very interesting. It didn't change anything about my normal life. You know what I mean? It's just fascinating how you build up what you think this experience is going to be, and really all it was just an honor to meet Joe and sit down and talk to him. Like the experience of that alone was the actual gift of that. It did nothing to change my normal life. I still have to sit down and thoroughly research my videos and sit down and edit them for 12 hours multiple times a week, it's very interesting. So I was I had my friend in town from Canada. He's like a CrossFit coach, and he was at some coaching thing, and I was sitting in the parking lot waiting on him, and I looked down at my phone and it says Joe Rogan followed you. And I was like, what? And so I was like, surely not. I thought
on X or Instagram
on Instagram. And I was like, surely it must be a fan page. This isn't real. And I opened it up and it says 19 million followers. And I'm like, wow. He probably just followed me because he thought that maybe my ancient history posts were interesting. I'm sure he didn't message me and ask me to come on his show. So I clicked messages and it said, hey man, I loved you on, such and such podcast. I'd love to have you on my show. And I just was like, I always, being candid, I always knew that was gonna happen. I just didn't think it would happen so quickly. I thought for sure I'd be at least 30 or so. 30. There were things I wanted to do and experience. There were expeditions I wanted to go on, experiences I wanted to have that I thought I would talk about. I didn't expect to be thrusted with that opportunity so quickly. Man, it was like I was just so lucky. Like I took the right opportunities. I took every podcast opportunity that I get that's in person like this. It's a real podcast. I always accept it, and because I'm just lucky to be kind of in this position. And I happened to be on Jesse Michael's podcast. I had no idea that Jesse and Joe knew each other, or that Joe was a fan of Jesse. And then he saw me on there, and just like, I don't think he knew. Maybe he didn't know anything about me before that, and somehow he enjoyed that enough. He wanted to talk to me about ancient history. So, all of a sudden I'm talking to Joe Rogan, and it's just crazy. So, but it was a whirlwind. You arrive, and he and I meeting each other on camera. That was actually us meeting each other. I had not spoken to him.
No warming up, nothing.
Yeah, no warm up or anything. We would walk in, and we got basically straight to it. And so that was really our first conversation in person. And of course, the 3 hours just goes by in a flash. And before you know it, it's over. And then, it's like you're trapped in purgatory for the next week or so, waiting on it to come out. Like, it's just every day feels like 3 days. And you're like, man, what were the things that I said? And what did I say that was wrong? What is something, oh wait, this conversation, did I say that? How are people going to react? Because the wolves are going to come out. That
Yeah,
everybody's going to
for sure.
analyze every little thing that you say
Making
for
these
3
shitty
hours.
clips out of it and
Yeah. Well, and
reacting.
it's a private conversation between he and I that's going to be aired to millions of people. So it's like you want to just enjoy the conversation, and people listen to it because it's an intimate, private conversation. Nobody wants to hear some heavily curated, highly considered conversation that's dumbed down, or that's watered down, some like cotton candy cookie cutter conversation that's made for the public. Nobody listens to that stuff anymore. That's like I don't know, what is it, late night television? It's just so watered down and nothing. People are interested when it's a real, genuine conversation. And in real, genuine, authentic conversations, you're going to say a lot of things that seem polarizing or things that may not be quite accurate because you're speaking off the cuff.
Yeah.
It's not like this is one of my YouTube videos. You know what I mean? Where I'm heavily considering.
It's not scripted.
So that kept me up. I didn't. Going on Joe's show initially did not feel like a big personal win. It didn't feel like a big triumph. More so, it was like the intensity of the nerves afterwards set in within a couple of hours. And, and I was constantly worried about what the backlash was going to be of certain things that I said. And I was worried if, what other people are going to have to say. And only kind of now, a few weeks later, I'm able to be like, that was pretty fucking cool that I got to go on Joe Rogan, and now I can kind of enjoy it a few weeks later, but it's kind of like, I don't know, I guess it's the first time I felt like fear of opportunity, but it was afterwards, you know what I mean? Afterwards, I felt like, holy crap, what did I just do?
Did it have a backslash or some bad reaction videos or?
No, I didn't get anything like that. I was worried about that. I'm not really that polarizing of a figure.
You're not a speculative figure, so
yeah, and I actually get backlash for not being speculative enough, but it's like, dude, these are just my opinions. I mean, good grief, like I make it very well known that I'm not married to my views on the ancient world. It's just it's the data. It's the data that I've been exposed to and my personal experiences with it. And this is what I think based on the things that I have seen. My personal experience with the data that I have seen is vastly different from you or from any other individual person, and all I'm sharing is my opinions. So I get backlash from people for not being speculative enough. I get this one guy who comments on all my YouTube videos, and he's like, I'm still cautious about the fact that you might be a mainstream shill or a mainstream imposter. And I'm like, or I get people who, there are some like really far out there ideas. Like, I'm not big on the pyramid power plant stuff, and, I'm open about that. I don't care if anybody is, it's fine. You believe what you want.
It's so frustrating when people are arguing on opinions or about opinions.
It's an opinion, and then I'll get people being like, oh, I liked Luke Caverns at first, but now it's obvious that he's a paid disinformant, and I'm like, dude, you should look at my bank account. Okay, I'm not a paid disinformant. Who has the money, by the way? This is kind of the whole thing. Is like, if somebody who has the money to pay somebody as little as me to be a paid or to be a disinformant. Also, I would never do something like that if I was offered. Nobody. I don't know. It's just stupid. Anyways, yeah, just
lazy thinking, I guess.
Yeah, it's lazy thinking. Like, oh man, it's so goofy. But yeah, Joe Rogan was amazing, and the thing I realized afterwards that the real honor of it was that you imagine like, oh man, I'm gonna go on the Joe Rogan experience, and I think it's impossible not to feel like him to not feel like that the main upside of the Joe Rogan experience is the springboard you get from it. It's just boom, like you just after that it's like whatever podcast you want to get on, you can get on it. You just express interest, or doors just open up so easily, and it's impossible to not think of that reality. But immediately afterwards, I realized that the best part of it was just getting to sit in the chair for 3 hours and talk to Joe. That was the real honor. And the real honor is to be able to talk to a guy that so heavily, saw it, and just send him cool stuff that I see in Peru. Just text it to him and be like, hey, look at this thing that I saw. And he responds like, that's crazy. That's the real honor of getting to go on the show. It's not the springboard it didn't make my life easier at all. I still have to do everything that I had to do before. The real honor is getting to be friends with Joe. That's cool. So, it's a good experience, and I look forward to going back and doing it again. I think it was a very healthy that I went through something that was so stressful as to waiting for that to come out, and immediately afterwards anticipating any backlash. That was intensely stressful. Like, by far the most stressed out I've ever been in my life.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it never felt like a personal win until kind of now I'm reflecting on it, and it was an intense reminder to it was like an intense reminder of reality, like not even Joe Rogan is going to change your life so significantly that you're not going to have to work anymore, or that you're not going to have to do all the normal shit you had to do. It was just like a slap, like, to appreciate the fact that you were just talking to Joe Rogan. That was the main part of it, is that you got to talk to him, and now you get to, be friends, kind of associates with him. That's what it was about. It's never about all this other stuff. You still got to force yourself to get out of bed and do all the same stuff you've always been doing. Yeah. So,
what are you up to next? Like expeditions, research?
Yeah. So, I think stuff in the US. I'm gonna, I have expeditions planned for Mexico, Belize, and South America, but those are kind of tentative and probably all 2026. This year I'm going down to Florida. There's some geoglyph sites that are down there that I really want to check out. There's some mound cities there that have never been charted before, that I want to go down and map and film and get some photo evidence of. And eventually, at some point, I want to prepare something to give to one of the universities down there in Florida. I realize that they do not have access to the LIDAR stuff that I have access to somehow. So I'm going to try to do something and do something worthwhile here in the States. There's a lot of mound sites that haven't been charted. And one of my personal goals is before I'm 30, I want to be a member of the Explorers Club. So that's a personal goal of mine. So, but you have to get 2 people to vouch for you. So I have 1 person. I have to get a second person.
You can try Adam Young.
Oh, is he in the Explorers Club?
Yeah. That's why we can have this event there next week. Or
maybe I need to talk to Adam. I've never actually spoken to Adam one-on-one. So maybe I need to, because my mentor, Professor Ed Barnhart, he's a member of the Explorers Club. But I got to do something. I have to do something worthwhile to get on it. What did Adam do? Well, maybe you don't have to disclose that here.
No idea, actually.
He probably did something. You have to do something significant.
Well, he started the VaseScan project, so maybe that was one.
Maybe that's
thing.
part of it. Yeah. I really want to be a member of the Explorers Club. That's a childhood goal, and I want to do it before I'm 30. I'd like to do it anytime, but before I'm 30, I feel like I got 2 years to squeeze it in. Maybe I can. But yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Luke Caverns, thanks a lot.
Dude, thanks so much for having me.
Where can my audience find you?
Just my name anywhere. YouTube is my focus. So, I have social media and everything, but my sister runs my social media. Her name's Grace. And, I'm really intensely active on YouTube. So I post a video every Friday about all kinds of different stuff. Lately I've been in the Americas. I do a lot of stuff in the Americas, but I'd say like every other month I do something big on Egypt, so yeah, probably like every 60 days I put out a big video on Egypt. I think the last one I did is what's really under the Great Pyramids. Like I dived into all the different theories and everything that's out there, and things that we know and things that we speculate might be there. Before that, I did my personal theory on why I think that the pyramids were never actually literally tombs for the pharaoh's physical body. And then before that, I did something on what existed before the Great Pyramids. So yeah, those are just like big essays that I'll dive into. I don't know what the next one's going to be on Egypt, but it'll be coming within the next month or so, within the next few weeks, actually. So
We
yeah,
will see.
yeah. So,
Thank you,
yeah,
man.
dude, thank you so much, man. This is cool to actually sit down and talk to somebody who's my age. This has been 5 long years of being surrounded by people who are twice my age, other than Johanna. So it's Yumi and Johanna, basically holding the torch for the young people. So yeah.
Let's keep it up.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, we gotta do more.
Yeah. See you next time.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Thank you, man.
Thank you so much. Awesome.
A massive thank you to my incredible supporters. Your generosity fuels this journey into ancient technology, keeping this show alive and pushing my research further than ever. As the ancient Egyptians would say, Ankh veja seneb,